Welcome, everybody. For the past 15 years, I've trained collegiate, high school, middle school, and elementary school student athletes, and one thing has always remained constant. They always experience some kind of setback, some kind of loss, some kind of disappointment, and that remains constant always. And since it remains constant, it's not so much about trying to avoid those kinds of situations, but how we can grow through them, which is what really matters. And why I wanted to talk about this today was because how they handle those setbacks at such a fundamental level in their developmental stages of their life will ultimately be how they handle those challenges as they get older, too. And in today's episode, we're going to review what is actually going on in the mind of the student athlete at that time. And then, number two, some simple techniques to help them pass the storm, because that's all it is. It's a storm passing by that won't last forever. But again, it's how we handle and process, which is most important. My name is Alex Rivas. In high school, I was awarded the most prestigious awards given to a high school football player in Nassau County. And since that time, I've been training student athletes to help them along in their journey to help them reach their full potential. So, the first step is when student athlete experience the pros and also the cons of being a student athlete, they're always going to experience some emotional highs and then also some emotional lows. So the first step is to always expect and understand that those will always be there. And I think it's something that we should not try to avoid, or something that we should not try to be shameful about or sad about, but actually really embrace and be excited about, because that is part of the journey. And that's what makes the journey so real, that you have the highs, but you also have lows. So it's good to normalize that with our student athletes. Now, the root of all the emotional highs and lows comes from our expectations. So, as humans, we experience and have expectations. And at a most fundamental and basic level, when the expectations are met, meaning we achieve what it is that we want, we usually feel happy or excited or joyful. And then when those expectations are not met, we may experience sad or disappointed or frustrated or things like that. So those emotional highs and those emotional lows, they come from our expectations. Now, student athletes, they will have many different kinds of reactions based on what happens in their daily life. And if you have one child or four kids, you may know that they react completely different. Even if you have two kids, one kid may respond differently than the other kid. So I find that there are student athletes who are very comfortable and willing to open up and share everything that's going on within them. And then there are other student athletes who may not say a word. And regardless of their habit, we want to help both of them process what's going on within them. So the next step is step number two, we want to create an environment of reflection. And that's really important because whatever they experience in their sport and in their school is a very important opportunity for them to grow through that moment. However, if there is no environment or there is no space for reflection, all these moments pass by, pass by, pass by, and that's it. Then they cannot grow through that time. So, I would like to share with all my student athletes at the end of class, and that may be after a workout or after a game or anything. I always give them some opportunity to share comfortably what they experienced. And I find this is really important because, as you know, life goes fast and their schedules go even faster. So if there is no intentional space where they get to reflect on themselves, what happens is they will never make the time because they're so fast. So personally, usually after a workout, I always have a moment with them to allow them to reflect. If you're a coach, that also may be after a game, when you're watching film, and then they can really just look at themselves honestly and just share comfortably. And we're going to go over a few questions you may ask to help them go through that process. If you're a parent, a good time may be during dinner time, after you give them some good food and they're full and happy, then you can have that conversation and that space where they can start to reflect on how their day was, how what happened, if there were any highs or any lows. You can talk about it at that time and make that kind of culture within the family. I think that's very important. So the third step is you want to ask the right questions. Again, the third step is you want to ask the right questions. And there are probably 100 different questions that you may want to ask, but I broke it down to three simple questions that you can ask to stimulate reflection, because once they are thinking in the right way, then they can process what it is that they're going through within them. And in our case today, whatever setbacks that they go through, they know how to funnel and dissect and go through all the emotional conditions so that they can grow through that experience. First question you can ask: what is it that you did well today? Second question is: what is it that you did not do so well today? And it's important to ask those questions because they're two sides of the coin. And some athletes, they only focus on all the positive things that they did well without clearly looking at the areas of improvement. And without looking at their weaknesses, it's very difficult to get better. And then there are other athletes who only focus on all the bad things that they did, and they forget or don't even see any positive things that they did and grew through. So sometimes those athletes, their mindset can be extremely negative and down. So we want to keep a very balanced approach. Number one, ask them, what did they do well today? And then number two, what did they do not so well today? And have them share comfortably. The third question is, what is one thing you can do differently moving forward? And this question is really, really important because it gives their mind some direction about what to do differently in the future. Because if they're not clear about their step, if they're not clear about that step, then what's going to happen is they're going to play the same cycle again and again and again and keep making the same mistake, and they cannot grow through that time. So again, the first question is, what did I do? What did you do well today? What did you not do so well today? And then number three, what is one simple thing I can do differently next time? Fantastic. So that's step three. Step four is you want to start small. If you're like me, you want all of the kids to grow super fast and reach heights that they never were able to in their life. And I also want that too. However, the student athlete, they only have a certain container as to how much they can handle at one shot. So, for example, if there are 10, 20 things that they could have done better, if they have too many at one shot, they cannot take the time to get used to improving one thing at a time. So, what I'm trying to say is, We want to start small and let them just improve one thing first. And once they get some momentum about how they can improve themselves through one step, then we can add two things, then five things, then 10 things. And that is the goal. As they develop their emotional maturity, they can handle more changes faster. But in the beginning, if this is something new that you're doing with your student athlete, one is good enough. One is good enough. And I have to say that this kind of process is something that I used all the time in school. So in university, I studied engineering. And as an engineer, it's extremely tedious work. So one plus or one minus, it throws the whole thing off. So as a scholar, as a student's mentality, having the ability to reflect to see why I did this wrong or why I did this right is really important. And that's what really helped me in my studies. And as I worked through that again and again, I was able to be the top of my class in engineering, which is not easy. So this process, it works not only for the sport, but it also works academically as well. So again, they're a student athlete. We have to make sure that they process and improve in both school and in sport. And basically, once you nail down this process, how they handle setbacks on the field and how they handle setbacks in the classroom, it's going to be similar. You diagnose and you go through the process in a similar way. So that's step number four. Start small, take one improvement at a time. And then step number five. Step number five is let them finish. As their guide and as their mentor or as their parent, we want to help them tremendously. However, what happens is we may actually cut them off before they finish what it is that they're going through. So when they're learning to articulate and go through the process of growing themselves and improving themselves, it's really important that we be very patient with them and allow them to finish their train of thought. When we do that, we give them the opportunity to go through the process themselves without us interjecting. Now, sometimes we may need to help them overcome some challenge in terms of how they're saying it or how they're going through the thought process, but we want to let them do their best to go through the struggle of processing and communicating what it is that they feel and what it is that they learned. So let them finish. And I do have to say that if you are doing this for the first time and you don't have that kind of culture yet with your student athlete, if you try this process, there's a high possibility you may hear crickets, meaning you ask them, "Oh, Johnny, what did you do well today?" They may not say anything, or they may say nothing. They may not say much. So, and I think that's understandable because it's extremely new. And usually, when I start this with my student athletes, when I meet them, it's also crickety. And I think that's okay. We have to let them feel comfortable. And as you make it a routine and make it part of the daily life, then they will get more comfortable to share a little bit and feel the benefit, and then a little bit more next time, and then they feel the benefit. So we got to go step by step with them. So, again, let's go through the process one more time. Number one, we want to expect and understand that there are always going to be highs and always lows, and there's nothing to be ashamed about or think something is wrong. It's part of the process of being a human being and them going through the journey as a student athlete. Number two, you want to make an environment that fosters reflection. So that may be after dinner, or you may have another time where you can have a nice, comfortable conversation with them. Number three, you want to ask the right questions. Number four, start small. And then number five, let them finish. So, this is today's episode, How to Handle Setbacks with Your Student Athletes. I hope you enjoyed. And these are the kind of topics that I review with my students in my mindset class. So, if this is something that you feel can benefit your child or your student athlete, please let me know, and I'd be happy to have them part of the class where we talk about these things directly to them. And if you have any other topics that you would like me to discuss, please, you can say something in the chat box, and I'd be happy to cover that in future episodes. Again, so comment one topic, you're going to get a gift, and I will see you in next week's episode. Thank you so much.